Hare Krishna, everybody. I'm not sure if anybody can hear me. My volume okay? Try something.
Hare Krishna.
Hey, Hare Krishna. My obeisance
Today we are
is
very fortunate to have the association of His Grace Prabhu. Many devotees already know Prabhuji because he is so much involved in ISKCON at different managerial and spiritual levels. But we'll give a brief introduction. His Grace Prabhu, a native of Dublin, Ireland. He joined the ISKCON Soho Street Temple in London in 1983. And just after 1 year, he received initiation from His Holiness Charu Swami Maharaj. And he spent his early part of his devotional career in distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, as many devotees did in the early period. Later on, he is very active contributor to ISKCON's website, dandavats.com. And also, His Grace Prabhu is a GBC member. In fact, it's very great achievement that he is the first grand disciple of Srila Prabhupada to be the chairman of the GBC body. His commitment is also solidified or highlighted by his participation in the European Regional Governing Body meetings from its inception in 1997 and by his ongoing managerial responsibilities in ISKCON Dublin. The GBC meeting, as we know, is very, the problems which are not solved at any level, they go to the GBC level. But Prabhuji, due to with determination and flair, he is contributing in various ways. So we are very, very grateful to His Grace Prabhu and express our gratitude by loudly chanting one time Hare Krishna Mahamantra with raised hands. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Grace Prabhu ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.
Hare Krishna, everybody. That was Vyasadeva Prabhu was speaking.
This was Chitta Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So what I'm not really sure what you would like in terms of how we conduct our little sangha. I'm not sure. I don't know if the best thing to do would be for devotees to simply, ask questions or express their thoughts or that kind of thing, to have some dialogue between myself and the devotees. Would that be the best thing to do?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Now I'm Vyasadeva Das. So Prabhuji, we like you can share some of the time you spend with His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj, and meanwhile we will request devotees to raise the questions or raise hand if they want to ask something, so like maybe 20-30 minutes you can share something. And we saw one video from His Grace Guru Gauranga Prabhu from Brooklyn. So in that you were also present with Maharaj, so if you wish to share some of the pastimes from Brooklyn, then we can request.
Okay. Okay, well, maybe I'll just speak for a few minutes then. Let me first say, I think, the thing that I really want to say is I'm so much missing Maharaj, so much missing him. He used to ring me, probably probably once every 2 weeks he would ring and we would talk. Sometimes we would talk for more than an hour on those calls. And he rang me actually maybe only a week or maybe 10 days before he left Ujjain. And at that time he mentioned to me that he was thinking I don't think he had decided at that point, but he was thinking about going to America. And I said to him that, oh, please think very carefully, Maharaj, because, you know, the situation is dangerous. And he quoted me, you know, the verse, padam padam yad vipadam, you know, that this material world is danger at every step, you know, whether we're in Ujjain or whether we're in America or wherever we are. But I just said also, you know, maybe those steps at the moment, those steps are even a little more dangerous. So please consider that. But as we know, he decided to leave Ujjain, and then we of course know all that has happened. But yeah, we would you know, anytime I was traveling to India, particularly for GBC meetings and things like that, the part that I would treasure the most, always treasure the most, was knowing that I would meet with Maharaj. And every time we would see each other, it was like I kind of felt like his kind of his kid brother, actually. That's how I felt like, and he was like my big brother. And he always was so caring, so loving, so kind. There's never one single time in my, and I think I've known Maharaj since about, I think the first time that I met Maharaj would have been 1985, I think, 85, maybe the beginning of 1986. So, you know, however many years that is now, 35 years or something. And every single time that I met Maharaj, he always greeted me with two things, with a big smile and a big hug. And, you know, it's when you feel somebody is, you know, basically has nothing but love and kindness for you, it just makes the whole situation so sweet, so nice. There's no anxiety. Actually, that's the thing. With being with Maharaj, it was like being in Vaikuntha, because he removed anxiety. He just removed all anxiety like that. And I always felt completely free from any anxiety when I was in Maharaj's association. So yeah, we had some wonderful times together. I remember he visited Ireland. You know, I don't know how many devotees on the call would be aware, you know, because times change and, you know, things pass, and it's hard to remember everything. So Maharaj actually was the GBC member for Ireland at one time. He was actually the GBC member. He wasn't for so long, but he was for, I think, maybe a year or so. He was the GBC member. So when he visited in that capacity, that was the first time I kind of got to know him personally. And it was a difficult situation that we had. And we had a lot of devotees who were, you know, a little bit upset with what had gone on with, you know, no need to get into the details. Many these things happen in ISKCON all the time. But devotees were upset with the previous person in charge. And they were, you know, upset, a little angry and whatever. And actually, the Irish have a nickname called the Fighting Irish, or the Rebellious Irish. You know, so they like to fight. So Maharaj came, and he knew nobody. He came just in service. He came as his duty as a GBC member, and it was a difficult situation that he had, because he had, you know, devotees who were quite upset and angry, etc. And the devotees expressed that for maybe half an hour or something like that. And then Maharaj spoke. And literally, as soon as he spoke, maybe 20 seconds or 30 seconds into speaking, he had just literally captured the hearts of all these devotees. And the situation became very sweet and very nice. And all the passions all disappeared. And it was all just due to Maharaj's personality, his sweet, sweet personality like that. so I think that was my first experience of him. And I remember being so impressed. I remember thinking to myself, gosh, you know, this must be a very similar experience that devotees would have had with Srila Prabhupada. His ability just to make people feel completely at ease, completely at peace like that. And ever since that time, we had an ever growing and ever close relationship, and in the end, we became so close. Yes, that video you talk about in Brooklyn a few years ago. That was when myself and Maharaj were serving on the GBC Executive Committee. Actually, I had been on the Executive Committee just a year before him, and each year there's 3 members on the Executive Committee. So each year, the person that's been on for 3 years, they step down and a new person comes on. So as soon as that was happening after my first year coming on, me and the other members were discussing, well, who should we ask to be part of the committee, the Executive Committee? And the first thought that came into my mind, and the first thing that I said was, Bhakti Charu Maharaj. Let's ask Bhakti Charu Maharaj if he would be willing to become an EC member. So then we served for like 2 years together on that committee, but then that extended into the special committee that was created to deal with the Brooklyn situation and the New York situation. And Maharaj was a hero. He was a hero in that. That was another difficult situation. I don't know the devotees how much they know about all the details of that situation, and no need for me to go into those details. But Maharaj was a hero in that situation. So brave. You know, we understand that fearlessness comes from a lack of Krishna consciousness. We become fearful when we don't have full faith in Krishna and are not fully dependent on Krishna. But when we have that full faith in Krishna, no situation creates fear for us. We become fearless because we know that we're fully under Lord Krishna's protection. And that was Maharaj in Brooklyn, you know, on 2 occasions. One, I'm not sure which video Guru Gauranga Prabhu showed you, if it was in the town hall meeting. That was a difficult situation because there was a lot of people, anyway, with different viewpoints. But Maharaj was the only one who spoke. We all spoke, but Maharaj was the only one who spoke, who during his talk, the devotees gave a round, not at the end, during his talk, they gave him a round of applause because he spoke so nicely. And also later, he had to go to the temple itself prior to ISKCON being given ownership of it. And he had to go and on his own practically and you know, confront the people who were causing all the difficulties. So yeah, he was a real hero, super brave, because sometimes we think of Bhakti Charu Maharaj, we think of him as being a very sweet, soft, sadhu-like devotee. And of course, he is a very sweet, soft, sadhu-like devotee, absolutely, 100%. But here was just another scenario where, you know, whatever was required in service of Srila Prabhupada and in service of ISKCON and in service of Krishna, whatever was required, Maharaj was able to just step up to the mark and deliver and provide whatever was necessary in any given circumstances. So yeah, Maharaj was everything actually. In the service of Krishna, he was absolutely everything. And I was just reading, and maybe I can read it for you. You're probably familiar with this, but I'm just going to read it because I was just reading it the other day and it's just incredible. But this was Maharaj's, your Guru Maharaj's Vyasa Puja offering, I think in 2012. So it was his Vyasa Puja offering to Srila Prabhupada in 2012. So 8 years ago. And he says, this is Maharaj speaking, Bhakti Charu Maharaj speaking. One day you asked me not to cook for you, saying, you can see that I can't. So Prabhupada was saying, you can see that I cannot eat anything. Still, why are you cooking? You have so many things to do. Why are you wasting your time cooking for me? And Bhakti Charu Maharaj said, I cook hoping that someday you will feel better and would like to eat something. And Prabhupada said, I will only get better when I leave this world. So that's a very, you know, that's a very kind of profound statement and strong statement for Prabhupada to make. And then Maharaj says, he says, I broke down crying. And in a very soothing voice, you said, Srila Prabhupada said, is this what you've learned from me? Is this what I taught you? Didn't I say, didn't I teach you that the spirit soul is immortal and never changing? It is only the body that changes and finally dies when the soul leaves the body. And then Maharaj says, Bhakti Charu Maharaj says, when you left this planet, those instructions remained as my guiding beacon. Although my heart ached with constant agony due to your separation, I tried to remember that you were always there. At that time, I used to imagine that just as a mother sometimes hides while teaching her son to walk, urging him to start walking by searching for her, similarly, you are hiding behind some invisible curtain so that I will search for you and thus develop my ardent desire to go where you are. Those days I used to think I had so many things to do here, therefore I needed to stay. Now that I have done whatever you wanted me to do, please allow me to go back to you. You have already called back so many of your dear children. Now please allow me to have this good fortune, aspiring to be your eternal servant, Bhakti Charu Swami, ISKCON, Bharatpuri, Ujjain, India. So I just thought you're probably familiar with that offering of Maharaj, but it's so amazing. It's got all the spiritual emotions that you can think of. His emotion, his deep pain that he felt when Prabhupada left, then taking shelter in our philosophy. And now in 2012, asking Prabhupada, you know, whenever I'm ready for you to take me back so that I can be with you again. And then, of course, it's 8 years since he wrote that, actually nearly 9 years, I guess, since he wrote that. And now he has gone back to Srila Prabhupada. So it's kind of like completes a full circle, if you like, from 1977 right up to 2020. Yeah, so I mean, I could say more, but maybe if devotees have anything they would like to ask or discuss or whatever, that would be maybe nice.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So there is one devotee from Surat, Subal Sham Prabhu. He's requesting, Prabhuji, if it is okay for you, can you please elaborate the difficulties faced in different parts of ISKCON in different temples, and how bravely His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj dealt with those situations, so that even we can get some good lessons from those situations.
Well, another obvious difficult situation that arises was problems that we had in Mayapur a few years ago. And again, it was only really Bhakti Charu Maharaj who was able to pacify the challenging devotees, the devotees who were creating some disturbance, etc. And just fearless, because, you know, when people are passionate and when tempers are raised, you know, people can do all sorts of strange things, you know. Once anger, as you probably know philosophically, that anger is carried through the blood. And that's why when people get angry, you know, the veins on their necks can protrude and stick out like that and whatever, and because the anger is flowing and through the bloodstream like that. And once a person is in that situation, you know, they're kind of out of control and can do anything. So that was a kind of situation we faced a few years ago, maybe 6-7 years ago in Mayapur. But again, it was Bhakti Charu Maharaj who approached the people who were agitated and angry fearlessly. And again, he disarmed them. In English, we have that phrase, you disarm them, meaning it comes from, means taking arms away. People have arms, so they can have guns or they can have knives or whatever, or they can just have, you know, negative and heavy emotions. But if you have a saintly person who's unmotivated, when our devotional service is unmotivated and uninterrupted, and that was Bhakti Charu Maharaj. His devotional service was uninterrupted from the time that he met Srila Prabhupada in 1976 to the time that he's left us just 12 short days ago. His devotional service to Prabhupada and Krishna was both unmotivated. There was no motivation. It was just done for their pleasure and for their satisfaction, and it was uninterrupted. Maharaj never stopped his devotional service once he met Srila Prabhupada. It was constant, literally 24 hours a day. I was staying with him in Mayapur just earlier this year in February. Some of you, I'm sure, know his rooms in Mayapur on the Conch building, on nearly the top floor. Well, it is the top floor actually of the accommodation. There's a meeting room above. So when you go into Maharaj's rooms, his room is straight ahead, and then there's another room on the right-hand side. So I was staying in that room with him, and it was amazing. It was amazing. He would stay for most of the day. He would be going to the GBC meetings, and I know GBC meetings are kind of tough. There's lots of difficult things that get discussed and difficult decisions that have to be made, and they're very long. They start at 10 o'clock every morning, and of course you've had the full morning program. They start at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then they finish at 6:30 in the evening. And then most evenings Maharaj will be having programs in his room, in his foyer. I'm sure some of you have been there at those programs, and Maharaj will be having programs there. But yet he would be up again. He would be up by 2:30 in the morning chanting his rounds. Just incredible. As I say, his service was unmotivated and uninterrupted. So yeah, difficult situations like that, like Mayapur, yeah, Brooklyn was a difficult situation. When I first met him in Ireland, it was a difficult situation. So yeah, Maharaj has been in many of those difficult situations, but he's always been fearless, and his intervention has always been very successful.
But the same devotee had another follow-up question, that was if you can share some of the speech or maybe some dialogues or some dealing he had personally in this kind of difficult situation.
Some speech. Well, that'd probably be a little difficult to remember the speech as such. But generally Maharaj's message in difficult situations was that we knew nothing before we met Srila Prabhupada. And even in Maharaj's own situation, even though, obviously he was born in Bharatvarsh in India, his spiritual life only started when he met Srila Prabhupada. So he was just so eternally grateful for that mercy that he got from Srila Prabhupada. So he was so strong in always reminding devotees about that, and that we should always stay at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. And another point that he made, which actually I think is a very interesting kind of discussion to have with all of you devotees as disciples of Maharaj, and being connected to Maharaj, is that now Maharaj has left physically. His Vapu form has left. Of course, now his Vapu form is in Mayapur and will be there in Samadhi. But physically he has left us. You can't ring him now. He's not going to ring me like that. So his physical form is gone. But of course his Vani is still there. And Prabhupada told us so many times that Vani is more important than Vapu. So that's the first thing to really kind of hold on to in this situation. Vani is more important than Vapu. You have so much Vani from His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj, so much Vani in the form of audio lectures, video lectures, etc. It's just, if it's not unlimited, it's just huge. So in that sense, you have just as much access to Maharaj now as you ever had like that. So his message was, always his message was, for us to be successful in our own spiritual life, and for us to be successful in pleasing Srila Prabhupada, which is the goal of our spiritual lives, and for us to show proper gratitude and gratefulness to Srila Prabhupada, who's dragged us all out of this material world, we have to see that his ISKCON society remains united together. Prabhupada used to give that lovely example from the Christian example, actually, from Aesop's Fables, that if you take one single stick, so if you take, say, one little matchstick, it's so easy to break it. You can break it without even exerting yourself. So easy to break. But if you put a bunch of sticks together, then they become impossible, virtually impossible to break, unless you're as strong as Hanuman or somebody like that. They become impossible to break. So Bhakti Charu Maharaj was so clear on this. We have to stay, whatever our differences, whatever problems we face, we have to stay united at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. So now, for all of you who are disciples or aspiring disciples or connected with Maharaj when he was here, now you have the opportunity to fulfill that message that Bhakti Charu Maharaj constantly informed us about and constantly told us of. You now have the opportunity to bring that message to life and fulfill that message by staying united in and under Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON like that. So that's a golden opportunity for you to not just please Srila Prabhupada, but please your own Guru Maharaj simultaneously. You can please both our founder Acharya and your Guru Maharaj simultaneously by remaining united under the banner, in the family, in the ISKCON family, working under the authority of ISKCON like that. So it's a great opportunity for all of you to please your spiritual master immediately by doing that.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. One devotee, he's asking, Prabhu, we in our spiritual life are very conditional and discriminative in our dealings with devotees, having some selfish agendas in our mind. How do we become unconditional and selfless like Guru Maharaj as Guru Maharaj was in his life?
How to become unconditional and selfless? You know, I mean, a very obvious quick answer would be you follow in your Guru Maharaj's footsteps. He just showed that example wonderfully, so you follow in his footsteps. In addition to that, you know, we have to, you know, if we read Srimad Bhagavatam as an example, so much of Srimad Bhagavatam is devotees praying to Krishna for protection, Now, they're not praying for Krishna for protection from, you know, for their material life. They're praying to Krishna for protection from any negative material influence that will interrupt or break or interfere with their devotional service like that. So let's understand how vulnerable we all are. And we are all so vulnerable in this material world. As I said, when I said to Maharaj before he left Ujjain, Maharaj, be careful, it's very dangerous. And he said, padam padam yad vipadam. There is danger at every step in this material world. So when we understand how fragile we are, how vulnerable we are, and how susceptible we are to Maya's power. There's that wonderful story, of course, where Srila Prabhupada, one of his disciples, asked Srila Prabhupada one time, Srila Prabhupada, you don't seem to be affected by Maya. How is it that you're not affected by Maya? And Srila Prabhupada said, because I have a healthy respect, a healthy fear of Maya. I know how powerful Maya is, and therefore I'm very respectful of that powerful energy. And that means I take shelter in Krishna, because ultimately only Krishna can protect us from the power of Maya. So if we understand how vulnerable we are and how easy it is for Maya to push us off our course of devotional service, how easy it is for her to do that, that will encourage us to actually pray. Just like here now, this is what we call sadhu sangha. We're all aspiring devotees and we're associating together, sadhu sangha. And as we know, sadhu sangha is one of the first and one of the most important aspects of spiritual life, and being able to maintain our spiritual life, staying in the association of devotees like that. So once we do, so basically we cannot do anything on our own. We are not impersonalists. We cannot do anything on our own. We need the association of devotees like that. So once we understand that vulnerability, we pray to Krishna to protect us from Maya's power, pray to Krishna to help us in our devotional service by staying in the association of devotees. And if we just come to accept that we are not the supreme controller, we cannot control everything. Indeed, we can control very little. The one thing that we can control is our desire to want to please our spiritual master, to want to please our founder Acharya. And if we pray openly to Krishna, and that prayer can be short, and that prayer can be but regular. It can be a daily prayer. Please, Lord Krishna, I cannot do this on my own. I'm a minute living entity, vulnerable to Maya's influence and Maya's strength and Maya's power. Please help me in my devotional service. Please help me to serve you and to serve my spiritual masters like that. And if we pray like that, then, you know, the power of prayer is such a powerful tool. As I say, the Srimad Bhagavatam, if you analyze the Srimad Bhagavatam, which I haven't done, but if you analyze the Srimad Bhagavatam, I think the number one subject you'll probably find in the Srimad Bhagavatam will be prayer, devotees. And these people who are praying, they're all devotees, demigods and devotees. They're praying to Krishna. It's not that they're thinking, oh, you know, I'm okay, I don't need to pray because I'm a devotee and I'm already fixed up. No, they're all praying. Great devotees, incredible devotees. You know, look at Queen Kunti, the Pandavas, etc. All these wonderful devotees, Prahlad Maharaj, praying for the protection of Krishna and the help of Krishna, the support of Krishna to be able to engage in devotional service in an unmotivated and uninterrupted way.
Next question is from Raman Reti Prabhu from Hyderabad. He's saying, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranams. Would you like, we would like to hear from from the Brooklyn episode in brief, and how His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj as a leader handled, and we as a disciple can learn lesson to handle crisis single-handedly.
That was to hear more about the Brooklyn thing. It seems like the Brooklyn pastime. Let's call it a pastime because that's what it was, a Brooklyn pastime. It seems like devotees are eager to hear about that. I'm trying to find, did that message come to me so I can read it again?
Yes, Raman Reti Prabhu.
Oh, Raman, a beautiful name, Raman Reti Prabhu.
Actually, that video was from Town Hall, which Guru Gaurang Prabhu shared. I have that. It's just 2 minutes video, in which Maharaj is speaking. Also, Guru Gaurang Prabhu is there, and you are also present. If you wish, I can play it on the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. Please play. That will bring back that wonderful memory for me, please.
Just 1 second.
Jaya Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Jaya Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Gaur Premanande Hari. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunnavadi Paschata Deshatarine Srila Prabhupada Ki To see that these kind of things are happening, devotees are being banned from the temple. Did Srila Prabhupada establish ISKCON all over the world just for that? It's very, very unfortunate. And I can assure you that we are going to take it up in ISKCON, GBC, and we are going to do something about it. This statement of mine is not as a member of this committee, but as the chairman of the GBC body. So let's just follow Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet and let us continue to fulfill his desire by spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, actually, Hare Krishna, that was what I was saying, that Maharaj was, got a round of applause, actually. They didn't wait till the end. They were applauding Maharaj based on what he was saying there. But in terms of let me qualify. You can see me there. I'm looking very grave and very serious because it was quite a heavy situation. It's quite a heavy thing. But let me, before I just speak a little bit on that, just say that, I guess we all get, to some degree, if not bewildered, we're at least curious when we see in ISKCON so many difficulties and problems that arise that have to be dealt with. But of course, if you look at the Mahabharata, you can see the same situation, all the different relationships on both sides and how they're interconnected. And of course, you end up with, the disrobing of Draupadi in the assembly, and there's many great devotees in that assembly who didn't say anything. So, it's just very hard. I mean, the verse that I actually learned when Tamal Krishna Maharaj left this world, that was what? That was, that's, sort of 16, 17 or whatever years ago, was the verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Na yasha kahi chidrajan, where Bhishma Dev is saying to Yudhishthira Maharaj that nobody knows the plan of the Lord. And even though great sages have deliberated since time immemorial on the plan of the Lord, they are none the wiser. They're none the wiser. They've thought about this for so long, but they're none the wiser. So none of us know what the Lord's plan is, but we do know that the Lord has a plan. That's the thing. We don't know the plan, but we do know that the Lord has a plan. And just as in Srimad Bhagavatam, when Parikshit Maharaj was bitten by the snake, in one sense you could say that Krishna didn't protect Parikshit Maharaj from the snake bite, but he did protect him from the consequences of the snake bite. And also it was as a result of Maharaj Parikshit only having 7 days to live that we were given Srimad Bhagavatam. That was the context of us now having the Srimad Bhagavatam 5,000 years later. So no one knows the plan of the Lord, but he does have a plan like that. So these things happen in ISKCON. These disputes come about. It's inconceivable sometimes, because the devotee that was in charge in Brooklyn, he was a devotee for a long, long time. And, I wouldn't have any criticism to make of him as a devotee. But somehow or another, he found himself in a situation whereby for some deep, anartha that he hadn't dealt with, he found himself basically wanting to take full control of that temple outside of ISKCON's authority. And of course, ISKCON cannot allow that to happen, because if once ISKCON would allow devotees to start taking temples and outside ISKCON's authority, before we know it, in another 10 years or whatever, 20 years, whatever it might be, ISKCON wouldn't exist. Everything would break up, just like what happened after Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj left this world, what happened with the Gaudiya Math. So you can see when Bhakti Charu Maharaj is speaking there, we will not allow this to happen. This cannot happen. And no matter what effort is required, no matter what resources are required, we have to fight for the principle that Prabhupada gave us, that we are just servants, and we're all servants under Srila Prabhupada's authority. And of course, as we know, when Srila Prabhupada left, the first article in his will is that the GBC, the Governing Body Commission, is the ultimate authority in the ISKCON movement like that. So basically the GBC body is now representing Srila Prabhupada's authority as being the ultimate authority in this movement. And devotees have to accept that, and they have to work, because if they don't, and they're allowed to just all go their own way, as I say, ISKCON will cease to exist. And your Guru Maharaj was so consistent and so strong on that point. Ever since I knew him, from the first day that I met him, he's always been so strong and so clear on that point, as it relates to the running of ISKCON, as it relates to the Guru Parampara as represented by ISKCON, as it relates to many other aspects of the Hare Krishna movement. So strong, so consistent, so clear, and so fearless in presenting and defending those particular points. And that's exactly what he was doing in that library in New York. However many years is that, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. That's exactly what he is doing. And like I say, on the one side, his nature is that he's a very sweet and humble person, very kind, very thoughtful, very considerate person. But there you can see him speaking very strongly and very powerfully, you know, that no, in the service of ISKCON, in the service of Srila Prabhupada, I will be like a lion. As Srila Prabhupada gave us that example as well. What was it? The example of being, was it courageous like a Bengal tiger? And the heart of a mother and the courage of a Bengal tiger. So Bhakti Charu Maharaj was like that, you know. His nature was to be so kind and sweet and have a big, big heart. But if he had to be like a tiger and be courageous and strong, then he was always prepared to do that. And he did it so well. He did it so well. Actually, in some respects, it's almost more effective when somebody whose nature is to be kind of humble and sweet and modest, and that's their natural proclivity, or that's their natural disposition, then when you see them in the service of somebody else, not for themselves, but they're doing it for somebody else, Prabhupada, ISKCON, and they become really powerful and strong, you really take note. You sort of sit up and think, wow, this obviously is a very important situation and a very important point that Maharaj is trying to convey, because normally he's not like this. So yeah, he was wonderful in that Brooklyn event. He was, like I said, he was a real hero.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. There is another devotee, Pratik Agrawal from Surat again. He is saying, as you mentioned, that we have to stay united no matter what happens. What can be done when there is difference of views and opinions with seniors? They are conservative and we tend to be more dynamic, want to try different ways as being relevant is very important. So how do we deal with these situations?
Yeah, just the last part again. Sorry, if you could just read it again, Prabhu. I just missed a couple of words, actually.
As you mentioned, that we have to stay united no matter what happens. What can be done when there is a difference of views and opinions with seniors? They are conservative and they tend to be more dynamic, want to try different ways.
Sorry, they tend to be more dynamic.
And we tend to be more dynamic, want to try different ways as being relevant is important. So how do we
as being, we want to be more dynamic as being what?
Dynamic, want to try different ways as being relevant is is very important. So how do we deal with these situations?
Well, first off, having differences of opinion is completely natural. You know, we are all individual living entities. We're all unique. We all have different perspectives on many different things, and that's just perfectly natural and perfectly normal. Also, there's that wonderful reference from Srila Prabhupada, at least I find it wonderful. When I first heard it, I found it almost disturbing. But anyway, he says in one letter to one devotee, the devotee is written to him and is kind of complaining, why are devotees arguing? Why are devotees fighting? You know, we're supposed to be, you know, we're supposed to be showing an example to people, an example like Vaikuntha kind of thing like that. So why are devotees arguing? Why are devotees disagreeing? And Prabhupada said, you are looking for utopia. So I guess everyone knows what the word utopia means. It kind of means a perfect situation. So you are looking for utopia, but utopia doesn't even exist in the spiritual world, what to speak of the material world. Now, when I read that, I thought, wow, I thought utopia must exist in the spiritual world like that. But anyway, if we look at the spiritual world, you'll see, you'll see the different gopis arguing with each other, how best to serve Krishna like that. So that all comes from individualism, from us being persons. There will always be differences. So then it's a question of how to best work out those differences. And although the devotee asking the question may not have mentioned it, I sense from the question, and I agree with this point, that sometimes that can be a little more difficult when you're dealing with seniors and you're dealing with people you see as your authorities. You can be a little more shy, or you don't want to offend, or etc. So it, it can be a little more difficult. But actually, just like Bhakti Charu Maharaj, you have to, if you trust that your motive is a good one, and you're sure that your motive is a good one, then you have to be brave, and you have to, in a respectful way, respond. And I was going to use the word challenge. I don't really mean challenge in a heavy way, but you have to be confident to express your opinion, because you're doing it not for yourself, but for the betterment of the movement and the betterment of the preaching society. And actually, if you look at Srila Prabhupada's disciples, I mentioned Tamal Krishna Maharaj a little earlier. If you look at someone like Tamal Krishna Maharaj, Prabhupada Prabhupada appreciated all of his disciples. There's no question, he appreciated them all. But you can really see he had a real appreciation for Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Why? Because he wasn't a yes man. He wasn't the type of person who would just sort of always nod in agreement with everything that Prabhupada said. Sometimes he would reflect things back to Prabhupada, and he would say, do you really think that's the best way, Prabhupada? What about this? And he would suggest alternatives. So, don't be afraid. As I say, we have to be at least somewhat confident that our motivation is a good motivation. But once we're confident that our motivation is a good motivation, then be confident to, present our different views and our different opinions. And actually, the point that the devotee made is a very good point. I think that the point made was that the older devotees, say your authority or whatever, they tend to be older in age. And because they're older, by definition, they'll likely be a little more conservative. So that's a natural development as time passes. Younger people tend to be a little bit more willing to take risks like that. But Prabhupada loved taking risk and wanted risks to be taken. So yeah, it's a question of negotiation. It's a question of negotiation, always in a respectful way. But that doesn't mean, doing it respectfully doesn't mean that you have to avoid presenting what you think is best. So present what you think is best and why you think it's best. Now, ultimately, there's that wonderful story. All pastimes of Srila Prabhupada are wonderful, so I keep on saying there's that wonderful story. It's simply because it's connected to Prabhupada, and you may be aware of it. But many, it was in the mid 70s, I think, the mid 70s, 74, 75, something like that. And again, I just said, Nayasha Kahi Chidrajan, nobody knows the plan of the Lord. So how these things happen, I don't know, because sometimes they're just almost unbelievable. They are almost inconceivable and unbelievable. But one time, the temple, this is in, by the way, this is in different books that have been written. Certainly it's in the Prabhupada Nectar series. It might also be in the Lilamrita. I can't immediately remember, but it's in different books that have been written. That the temple president of New York again. What is it about New York? Because this was a New York story as well in 74 or 75. And the temple president was a devotee called Bali Mardan Prabhu. And he had got married to, I think, a lady she was a wealthy lady. Her family was wealthy, connected to the car industry, I think. Anyway, he got married to this lady. And I guess this lady obviously was attracted to him as the husband, but she wasn't so fixed up in Krishna consciousness. So anyway, She then became the temple president's wife, and they were living in the temple. But she still had an attachment. I can never understand these things, how anybody, once they've tasted the smallest morsel of prasadam, whatever it is, if it's a little bit of sabji or a little bit of puri or a little bit of sweet rice or whatever it is, I can never understand, once someone has tasted even the smallest amount of prasadam, how they can ever be attracted to, you know, mode of ignorance foods again. I just don't understand. Anyway, this lady was still attached to something that you have in India now. You didn't have this in India in the 1970s, but you do have it now. Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's just kind of inconceivable how somebody could have that attachment and be a devotee. So she was eating Kentucky Fried Chicken. And what she was doing was she was putting the, when she was finished with it, she was putting the leftovers, you know, the bits of bones, she was putting them in the box, the Kentucky Fried box, and putting them under the bed in their room. So then one devotee was coming cleaning the room. Some devotee was coming to clean the room because they were doing their service for the temple president, cleaning the temple president's room. So because this person was a good cleaner, they were doing their service nicely, they were cleaning under the bed. And then they found, oh, there's a Kentucky Fried Chicken box under the bed. Why the temple president's eating Kentucky Fried Chicken? Ah! Because he wasn't. The temple president wasn't. He didn't even know. And it was just his wife that was doing it. Anyway, that devotee then went to the vice president, not to the president, because she thought the president was involved. So she went to the vice president and she said, oh, what are we? And the vice president called a meeting of 2 or 3 or 4 other devotees, sort of senior devotees like that. And they were like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? The temple president's eating chicken. Oh my God, what are we going to do? We'll have to shoot him, or we'll have to throw him off Brooklyn Bridge, or we'll have to, you know, whatever we have to do. We have to do something like that, you know. And then one devotee said, oh, actually, Srila Prabhupada is due to visit us in 2 weeks' time. In 2 weeks, Srila Prabhupada will be here. Maybe we should wait until Srila Prabhupada comes and ask him what we should do. So then they thought, yes, okay, let's do that. I think it's a good idea. And they also probably didn't really want to have to deal with the situation. But anyway, they thought, good idea. So Srila Prabhupada came and they told Prabhupada, and then Prabhupada, you know, talked to the temple president, and, you know, Prabhupada sorted the problem out. It was over. But then he said to the devotees, this was very intelligent. You didn't take matters into your own hands. It was a difficult situation. You weren't sure what to do. So you went to your authority to resolve it. So ultimately, we have to accept authority. I'm not, in answering the question from Prabhu, I'm not suggesting we don't accept authority, but at the same time, it's a balance between accepting authority and expressing our heartfelt and strong opinion on how better to help with the preaching or whatever that may be. And ultimately, you know, most authorities, I think, in ISKCON, most, you know, are reasonable, and they will come to some kind of agreement with you as to how best to proceed. In the event that that doesn't happen, and you're convinced that the authority is wrong, then you always have the option to go to their authority. And that is the beauty of our movement and the beauty of the way Srila Prabhupada structured it and set it up, that everybody has an authority in this movement. So Vyasadeva Prabhu, introducing me, said that I'm a GBC. So I'm a GBC member, but I still have authority. My authority is the GBC body. And if I do something I shouldn't do, or some devotees thinking I'm not acting correctly or making bad decisions or whatever it may be, and I disagree with them, they can always go to my authority like that. So everyone in this movement has an authority. So hopefully you can negotiate and discuss and work out whatever the problem is. But ultimately, if it's impossible to do that and you're convinced that your authority is making a mistake, then you can approach their authority.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. It was a very elaborative answer to this devotee. And there is one devotee, Manu Prabhu. He's from Bombay, and he's asking, Hare Krishna, dear Praghosa Prabhu. Thank you so much for being with us at this time. My question is that Guru Maharaj always wanted that ISKCON should have a stream of finances coming through devotees who have the ability to open new business. Maharaj also wanted Grihastha to be engaged in mainstream ISKCON, and he felt that someday ISKCON will have enough and more projects which can engage Grihastha in very spiritual environment, so that devotees do not have to work for outside world so much. In some sense, Maharaj wanted ISKCON to be financially strengthened and thus execute Srila Prabhupada's vision of creating Varnashram and farm society. Please advise how is this possible? What we can do to achieve this? Your servant Manudas.
Hare Krishna Manu Prabhu. Wonderful question. I think we could probably speak for the rest of Kali Yuga on this question. No, but it's a wonderful question. First off, let me quickly say that Maharaj, this is another example of Maharaj, your Guru Maharaj, being very brave and very pioneering. This point about creating businesses and having Lakshmi generated through businesses to fund ISKCON projects. Because Maharaj did that, and he also got into some problems with that. So he was very brave, you know, he was very brave with that. Just like Srila Prabhupada, some people would criticize Prabhupada for you know, marrying devotees. Sannyasis aren't meant to do that, and other things like that. And Prabhupada said, no, everything that is in the service of Guru and Krishna, everything that is in the service of preaching, then we don't care for the rules and regulations. For a higher principle, we will do all of these things. So Bhakti Charu Maharaj was the same. You know, he took risks in that area, and as I say, you know, sometimes he got into some problems because businesses don't always work out. It's just the nature of it. You don't always, the business does not always work. But then, more generally, to your point, the second part where you say, I'm just reading it here now. I've discovered the comment section, so I can read when you're reading Vyasadeva Prabhu. I can read along, which is good because it helps me fully understand. So your second part about wanting Grihastas to engage in mainstream ISKCON, but obviously Grihastas have to generate an income. And in some respects, actually, my own life is kind of like that. That I never wanted to. I never wanted there to be a separation between my service and how I would, you know, generate Lakshmi for my Grihasta life. I'm married and I have I was going to say I have two children. They're not children. They're not children anymore. But anyway, I actually have two grandchildren now as well. You know, I have two sons and they're Sankarshan and Panchajanya. And they are now 33 and 30. That's their ages. Yeah, I'm thinking, you know, men always have a problem remembering their children's ages. You know, generally the mothers are much better at that, remembering all those details. Anyway, so they're in their 30s now. But I never wanted to have to separate those two things. I always felt if I separated them, I might struggle to be able to continue my service. And actually, when Shiva Ram Maharaj was the GBC for Ireland, back again, this goes back now to this would have been the early to mid 90s. I remember having this conversation with him. Because I had recently got, well, I got married in 1986, and a group of Grihastas at the time, we kind of formed our own little community, not in a rebellious or negative way, but just because we felt we needed to focus particularly on Gurukul and providing a Krishna conscious education for our children. And we developed a little community, and we had a Gurukul, and we had a farm. We were growing vegetables. We had some cows. We were milking the cows, etc. That type of thing. And Shiva Ram Maharaj used to say to me, "This is wonderful, Praghosa, wonderful, but you've got to also think about, you know, preaching in the capital city of Dublin, because we were in the country. We were about 50 miles in the country." And I agreed with him. But I said, "But Maharaj, you know, how are we going to finance that? Historically in the West, you may know, historically in the West, temples have been financed. In the beginning, temples tended to be financed by devotees selling what we call paraphernalia, whatever that paraphernalia would be. It could be paintings, could have been, you know, candles and all sorts of paraphernalia like that. But selling paraphernalia has nothing to do with your devotional life, other than a Gata Sukriti, you're giving the Lakshmi to Krishna. But the activity has nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. So I was saying to Maharaj, we've lost so many devotees by them engaging in these activities, you know, like that. They become weak in their Krishna consciousness. So, you know, if we're going to do something in Dublin, I want to make sure that whatever way that we're generating income is also Krishna conscious. So he says, Shiva Maharaj said, well, I agree. So what are you going to do? And I said, well, the obvious thing is prasadam distribution, because that generates Lakshmi, but it's also Krishna conscious. The activity is Krishna conscious. Prasadam is one of the three, Prabhupada said, chanting, dancing, and distributing prasadam. They're the three pillars of the Hare Krishna movement. So I opened a restaurant. I opened a Govinda's restaurant in Dublin in 1990, April the 1st, April Fool's Day, April the 1st, an interesting day to start a business. It was April the 1st, 1998. And subsequently, we opened a few more restaurants. We had 3 at one point. And from those restaurants, we were able to buy, ironically enough, just a few years ago, 3 years ago. So the whole process took a long time. It took over 20 years to get from the point of running a restaurant or restaurants and generating enough Lakshmi that we could buy our building. The building was like, you know, because it cost more than €1 million, so it's quite a lot. So it was a long-term plan, but it happened that we were able, through the business of prasadam, both support, I was able to support my family through that business, but also ultimately buy a temple like that. So I completely agree with you, Prabhu. Who is this that answered that question? That was Manu, yeah. I completely agree with you, Manu Prabhu, that really that's what we should try to do. Grihastas should try to enter into a business that's a Krishna conscious business, but can maintain them also as Grihastas. And then, of course, you mentioned about farm projects. Farm projects, and everybody who's on the call today, farm projects are arguably the last piece, or at least one of the last pieces of the jigs of Srila Prabhupada's jigsaw to make ISKCON completely successful. It's kind of proved to be the hardest thing for us to achieve. And as we know, Maharaj went to Florida. And of course, in Florida, he had started his Deland project, which was specifically for looking after cows and protecting the cows and the bulls, etc. So he was very much focusing on this area. But that's that's really the last big piece of the ISKCON jigsaw in order to create self-sustaining farm communities. And it's amazing. It's amazing. Prabhupada was talking about this, you know, New Vrindavan, you know, in the 60s. Prabhupada was talking about this in the 60s. Now we see, with a combination of climate change, with the whole economic situation, now, of course, we have this latest thing, the coronavirus, the horrible coronavirus. We see that it's so essential. This self-sustaining farms are so essential. And the two things are there. The self-sustaining farms, so as that devotees can you know, be able to maintain themselves and not be dependent on the outside world for their maintenance and sustenance in terms of food and all of that. But then also, Prabhupada wanted those farms connected to restaurants in our cities for preaching and for generating Lakshmi. It's just the perfect combination, the perfect marriage, self-sustaining farms and restaurants in the city where we can preach. So I tell you, you know, we all should be collectively praying to Krishna to inspire us to figure out how to make this project of self-sustaining farms successful, because it will be super pleasing to your Guru Maharaj. He was trying it, to Srila Prabhupada, and obviously ultimately to Lord Krishna. So thank you, Manu Prabhu. It's a wonderful question.
Next is Radhika Raman Prabhu has posted, but it is Kirtida Gopi Mataji. She is asking, how to believe everything as plan of Lord Krishna when we have thoughts in mind, like we could have been little more careful, we could have done this or that, we could have stopped this from happening. Sometimes we are careless in life and certain things happen. How to relate such actions as also plan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Please forgive if this is an irrelevant question. Your servant Kirtida Gopika.
Thank you, Kirtida Gopika. It is certainly not an irrelevant question. It's a really key question, and it's a question that, you know, we have to, you know, find an answer to. We really, we want to find answers to every question. We have to find an answer to this question that is satisfying to us intellectually and philosophically, but is also satisfying to our heart. I mean, I go back to Bhakti Charu Maharaj's Vyasa Puja offering from 2012. You know, our philosophy is, we are not these bodies, we're eternal spirit souls. Everyone has to leave this world. Srila Prabhupada had to leave this world. So we know that everyone has to leave at some point in time. Now, with Bhakti Charu Maharaj, I do have to say this, because this was always something that really kind of, not amazed, maybe amazed is too strong, but it always struck me about Bhakti Charu Maharaj. He was 74. He was very youthful. He was very youthful, both in terms of his thought processes, but also in terms of his physical stature and his, you know, he didn't walk, he never crouched like that, you know, he never slowed down. I'm not going to mention any devotees' names, but, you know, I'm aware of devotees who were younger than Maharaj, in their late 60s or in their earlier 70s, who were either crouching down, maybe some of them, you know, were shaking a little bit like this. Maharaj was so youthful, so strong, you know, so graceful, actually, the way that he walked and the way that he presented himself. And I always, you know, I always thought of him as, in fact, I joked with him one time that he reminded me of Narada Muni. And I said to him, and before I became a devotee, I didn't know of Narada Muni, of course. And of course, Krishna's known as Navayovanam. He's eternally youthful, doesn't age beyond 16. So I was joking with him that he was reminding me of being Navayovanam and reminding me of Narada Muni like that. But then I said, before I became a devotee, and before I knew about any of these incredible personalities, I said there was another person I learned about in school when I was a very young boy. And that was, I don't know if any of you have heard of Peter Pan, you know. And I used to say to Maharaj, you know, you also remind me of Peter Pan. He knew Peter Pan. He knew who Peter Pan was. So yeah, Maharaj was very useful and strong and all of those things. So from that point of view, you know, you can argue he left before his time, but ultimately nobody leaves before their time, because their time is the time that Krishna chooses us to leave. And we have ultimately no control over that. And we don't know what the plan was. It's true. You know, the thing is that you could say, if I'd been stronger with Maharaj on the phone call 10 days or so before he left, if I said, no, Maharaj, I'm telling you, you must not go. And I'm going to contact the GBC Executive Committee, and I'm going to tell them that you're thinking of going, and that they're going to write to you, and they're going to give you an instruction that you cannot go, you must stay in Ujjain. So let's just run that scenario. Let's say that happened, that actually happened. Who knows what the Lord's plan is? Something else might have happened to Maharaj and Ujjain. We just don't know, you know. So we take it all as the Lord's plan. And even though sometimes externally we're thinking that it doesn't seem like a good plan, or it doesn't seem like a fair plan, or, you know, or whatever way we may think of it, ultimately it is the Lord's plan, because actually it's a test in our faith, and we will get tested in our faith many times in our life. There's that Christian example, which you may be familiar with, and I'm sorry for giving a Christian example, but I think it's a good example, where Jesus Christ, sort of his biggest kind of supporter, his biggest follower, his best disciple, if you like, St. Peter, Jesus said to him, that this was in the evening time, this was at the Last Supper, I think, right? In the evening time, he said to St. Peter, by daybreak, by the time the sun rises in the morning, you will have denied me 3 times. Not just once, not twice, 3 times you will have denied me. And St. Peter said, no, 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 that's impossible. I would never deny you, or deny who you are, or deny my allegiance to you. It can never happen. By sunrise, the guards had come, etc., the soldiers, and St. Peter was asked, does he know who this man is? And 3 times he denied like that. So, you know, we just don't know. But our faith gets tested. Our faith in Krishna, in Guru and Krishna, is always going to be tested, because as you know, Maya, we were talking about Maya earlier, one of Maya's main functions, if not her main function, is that she needs to make sure before you, me, or anyone else can go back to the spiritual world, that we're pure, that we have uprooted all of the anarthas from our heart. That's her job. So she's testing to make sure we're all pure. So part of that is our faith in Krishna is continually being tested. So this is actually, and this is your Guru Maharaj who was teaching you, all of your spiritual lives he was teaching you. This is your Guru Maharaj in conjunction with Lord Krishna testing our faith again in terms of his departure, and making sure that we're strong in our understanding of the Krishna conscious philosophy, and that Krishna is not a blade of grass moves without the sanction of the Supreme. And another way of understanding it, I think I heard this recently, someone was mentioning it, and I thought it was a nice example, was that if you look at animals and how they bring up their young, the example was given of birds, how a bird will throw the baby chicks out of the nest, forcing them to learn how to fly. But many different animals do that to their young. They'll push them into difficult situations. You know, the penguins will be thrown into the water to learn how to swim, and, you know, different animals depending on the situation. But the mother is always, or the father maybe, or both, are always pushing their young into challenges to learn how to fly on their own, to learn how to swim on their own, to learn how to walk on their own. And actually, as Maharaj said also in his offering to Prabhupada, like that, like a mother will hide to try and help the child walk, you know. So we can see it like that too. You know, when you think about it, when Srila Prabhupada was here, most of the devotees who joined the movement were in their 20s. They were kids, you know. And when Prabhupada left in 1977, some of them were still in their 20s, some were in their, most of them were in their 30s. They were still young men and women. They weren't old, they were still young. You know, I don't know how old all of you are who are on the screen. I could start looking at the different pictures and start guessing how old you might be. I'm not sure. But you know, I'm 59 years of age. It's kind of time that I learned to walk on my own, that I learned to fly on my own. And if I'm always holding on, of course, metaphorically, we can still hold on to the coattails of our spiritual master and to the coattails of Srila Prabhupada, metaphorically. But if we're doing it actually, you know, not just metaphorically, but actually in reality, constantly doing that, even though we've now been practicing spiritual life for many years, it's kind of time for us to stand on our own. So maybe that was Krishna's arrangement. His thought was, Srila Bhakti Charu Maharaj has done so much to push on this movement, ISKCON movement created by his beloved spiritual master. He has done so much over the last 40, nearly 50 years, whatever it is. He's done so much. I now want to give him a rest, and I want to bring him back to me. He's done his part. And now the baton has been handed, because that baton has to be handed at some point. Whether it's Prabhupada, Bhakti Charu Maharaj, anyone else, nobody can hold on to the baton forever, or we can expect somebody to hold on to the baton forever. That baton has to be passed. So now Bhakti Charu Maharaj is passing that baton to all of you. And can you think, or if you think that you would be able to even do 10% of what Bhakti Charu Maharaj has done in his lifetime in service to Srila Prabhupada, if each of you could do 10%, think how wonderful the ISKCON movement would be by the time you're passing the baton on. It would have grown exponentially if you were all able to do 10% of what Maharaj has done. And he would be so happy for you to do that. So yes, you know, you know, it's not easy. I'm not suggesting that it's easy to do all that you've mentioned. But still, we have to try. And Bhakti Charu Maharaj is there watching over us. You know, it's not that he's not there. You know, he's still there. He's an eternal spirit soul, just like everybody else, and he's still there. And you can pray to him, and you can, you know, you can seek guidance from him, and it will come in different ways. It may not manifest in a clear and obvious way, but I guarantee you, you know, it will manifest.
Okay, Prabhuji. So if it is okay for you, there is one last question.
Sure.
Which I found a little bit relevant. This devotee Krishna Kirtan Prabhu from Ujjain, he is asking, with the divine mercy of Guru Maharaj, I had lot of his personal Vapu association, many personal instruction and memories. But now turning towards Vani is certainly difficult because the mind gets flooded with his memories. How to now focus on his Vani lesson and thus please him forever?
Krishna Kirtan Prabhu, thank you for that very sweet question. That's a real sweet question. So let me first say, do not, please do not stop letting those memories flood into your mind. Do not stop that. Let them flood as long as they want to flood. And as long as they're coming, just let them come. You know, if you think of all, again, think of all the wonderful personalities, you know, and the grief. Think of the grief when, you know, when Ashvatam beheaded the 5 sons, you know, and the grief that was experienced then by the Pandavas, etc., and Draupadi. Think of so many situations, you know, where there's grief for family members leaving. Grief is a natural human, and we are human beings, you know, it's a natural emotion of the soul to actually grieve somebody. And actually, if we don't properly grieve, or if we try to stop the grieving process and block it out, that's actually not a healthy thing, neither spiritually or materially. It's not a healthy thing. So please, Krishna Kirtan, allow those memories to keep flooding as long as they come. Just allow them to come and remember them, take pleasure in them, you know, absolutely. So please make sure that you do that. And when that process naturally, and it won't happen overnight, it will be a gradual process. They'll gradually die down. And you know, I can speak personally. My mother died when I was 12, when I was 12. And although she was, she'd been sick, she died from breast cancer, and she'd been sick for, you know, I'm not sure exactly actually, but she'd been sick for a long, long time, many, many months, if not even a couple of years, you know. And I was aware she was sick because she would spend a lot of time in bed, she'd spend time in hospital. But somehow or another, being a boy, and we're, you know, men are supposed to be sort of not as emotionally advanced as women, particularly girls, boys and girls. Girls tend, I think, to be more emotionally kind of advanced. Me, even though I knew she was sick, she was in and out of hospital. It never entered my mind that she was gonna die. Never one. Anyway, she did, and I was 12. It was it is, you know, maybe up until Maharaj leaving, but it is, you know, still the most traumatic experience of my life. You know, my mother, of course, you're always close to your mother, and also I was only 12 when it happened. It was such a torment. It was so painful. It was such a painful thing when my father told me that your mother has actually died, you know. And I was in floods of tears for such a long time. It was so hard to get over, really, really hard. But now, whatever it is, you know, 40 something years later, whatever it is, he died in 74, you know, it's kind of okay, you know, you still remember your mother, you know, you still obviously have affection, etc. But there's no pain anymore. The pain is gone, you know, it's long gone actually, you know. So the non-devotees have that saying, time is a great healer. So as time passes, that pain will reduce, you know. So, but allow that process to take place naturally, while at the same time not ignoring the philosophical point about Vani. You don't have to ignore that, but don't try to embrace that exclusively and block out the Vani, sorry, the Vapu and the memories that you had with Maharaj. Those memories will always be there for you. And hopefully one day you'll be able to share them again with Maharaj. So they're good things, they're positive things. And you were very fortunate, as you said, to have so much personal Vapu association with Maharaj. So they're cherishable, they're wonderful. So allow them to continue, allow them to naturally decrease, while simultaneously understanding the philosophical point about Vani, and the philosophical point that we're all spirit souls, we're currently in this material world, so we all have to leave. That transition from this body to our next destination, that's destined. Once you're born, you have to leave, you know, so embrace that as well. But please, you're very lucky, you know, to have had all that association, and please cherish those memories for as long as you possibly can.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So this was the last question. So we would like to thank, we are very much grateful to you for your heartfelt talk and sharing Brooklyn pastimes. Your Grace and Maharaj had a lot of interaction during GBC meetings, and your Grace shared many inspiring learning pastimes from there, due to which devotees could know more about Maharaj's contribution to the ISKCON as a managerial leader, also apart from being a spiritual leader. And as your Grace said, Guru Maharaj has given us so much Vani. If we follow that and stay united at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada, we can please Guru and Srila Prabhupada both. So it was really hope-giving and soul-soothing for the devotees, and we beg for your blessings to follow his Vani. Your Grace blessed us with your association in 2017 during midterm meetings, and we would like to request your Grace to please visit Ujjain again to bless us with your inspiring association during this crucial stage. So we thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. And the next time, I promise you, the next time that I come to India, I will visit Ujjain. We of course don't know the next time we're going to India because of this horrible coronavirus that you're very familiar with. But the next time that we're able to visit India, I promise you I will come to Ujjain. Thank you for allowing me to be with you today. And I wish you all the best. We're all with you. ISKCON's one big family. Your Guru Maharaj was so strong on that point. It's one big family, and we're all here to help you in whatever way we can. Thank you so much.
Prabhuji, we thank you all together by chanting one Hare Krishna Maha Mantra.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhu ki jai. Srila Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Prabhu ki jai.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat pranams.